The leather-clad giant with tattooed arms and a skull patch on his vest wasn't supposed to be the hero of anyone's story. But sometimes, the universe has a strange sense of humor about who it sends to save us. It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in July when Marcus Chen first noticed the boy. The sun beat down mercilessly on the rest stop just outside of Barstow, California, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage. Marcus had pulled his Harley into the lot alongside. 3 of his brothers from the Desert Riders chapter, their motorcycles forming a neat row of chrome and defiance against the mundane backdrop of minivans and sedans. He was 47 years old, carrying the kind of past that makes people cross the street when they see you coming. 20 years ago, he'd been someone different, someone angry, someone lost. But the Brotherhood had saved him, given him purpose, taught him that loyalty and honor weren't just words tattooed on skin. They were principles worth living by. Marcus was heading into the convenience store for water when he saw him, a small boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with dark hair falling into his eyes. The kid was standing near a blue sedan, his small hand pressed against the window. But it was his eyes that caught Marcus's attention, wide, frightened, darting between the store entrance and something inside the car. At first, Marcus thought nothing of it. Kids got restless on road trips, but something made him pause, that sixth sense that years of hard living had sharpened to a razor's edge. The boy's lips were moving, forming words that no one could hear. And his hand, Marcus squinted against the sun, his hand was making a gesture. Palm facing out, thumb tucked in, fingers folded down over it. Marcus's blood ran cold. He knew that signal. They all did. It had gone viral during the pandemic. A silent distress call created for people trapped in dangerous situations. "Help me, I'm in danger." The boy was doing it over and over, pressing his small fist against the glass like a desperate Morse code. Marcus didn't hesitate. He changed course, walking toward the sedan with the casual stride of a man who had nothing to prove but everything to protect. As he got closer, he could see through the tinted windows. A woman in the driver's seat, mid-30s, staring straight ahead with the rigid posture of someone barely holding it together. And in the back, partially obscured, a man leaning forward with one hand gripping the back of her seat. The boy saw Marcus approaching and his eyes widened further. For a moment, Marcus worried the kid might panic, might give away that someone had noticed. But the boy was smart. He slowly lowered his hand and turned his face away, pretending to look at something in the distance. Marcus tapped on his radio, the small device clipped to his vest that connected him to his brothers. "Guys, blue sedan, 3 rows back." Kid in distress. Silent signal. "Possible hostage situation." The response was immediate. "Copy that. Moving into position. Police?" "Not yet. Need to assess." Could spook him. Marcus had seen enough in his life to know how these things could go wrong. If there was a weapon involved, if the man inside was unstable, calling the cops too soon could turn a tense situation into a tragedy. He needed more information. He walked past the car once, twice, each time getting a better look. The man in the back was agitated, his other hand hidden from view. The woman's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The boy sat perfectly still now, but his chest was rising and falling too. Quickly, the kind of breathing that comes with pure terror. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Reaper, his road captain. "Surveillance cams cover the lot. Store manager calling cops now on our signal." "What's your play?" Marcus thought fast. They couldn't wait, but they couldn't rush in either. Then he saw his opening. The man in the back shifted, reaching for something. In that moment, Marcus made his decision. He walked directly to the driver's side window and knocked, firm but not aggressive. The woman's head jerked toward him, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Marcus pointed to his motorcycle, then made an exaggerated gesture of confusion, mouthing the words, "Do you know if there's a gas station ahead?" It was innocuous enough. A lost biker asking for directions, but it served a purpose. It let everyone in that car know that someone was paying attention, that they'd been seen. The woman's hand trembled as she rolled down the window a crack. "About 5 miles up the road," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Thank you, ma'am," Marcus said, making eye contact. He let his gaze drift to the back seat just for a second, meeting the boy's terrified eyes. Then he looked at the man. "Hot day for traveling." The man in the back stiffened. "We're fine. Just passing through." "Understood." Marcus nodded slowly, deliberately. I'll be right over there if you need anything. Anything at all. He walked away, every nerve in his body screaming to turn back. To rip open that door and pull the kid out, but patience had saved more lives than fury ever had. By the time Marcus reached his brothers, 3 more motorcycles had pulled into the lot. Word traveled fast in the club. They formed a loose perimeter. Not obvious enough to provoke action, but visible enough to send a message. You're surrounded by people who care. Cops are 2 minutes out, Reaper said quietly. Silent approach. Those were the longest 2 minutes of Marcus's life. He watched the sedan like a hawk, saw the moment when the man in the back realized something was wrong. The door handle moved. Marcus tensed, ready to sprint the 30 feet between them. Then everything happened at once. The back door flew open and the man bolted, running toward the back of the lot. But he hadn't counted on 8 motorcycles boxing in the exits. He made it maybe 20 yards before Reaper and 2 other members cut him off, their bikes forming a wall of steel and leather. Marcus ran to the car. The woman had collapsed over the steering wheel, sobbing. The boy was already scrambling out, his small legs pumping as he ran straight into Marcus's arms. The kid weighed nothing, all bones and fear, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Marcus knelt down, making himself smaller, less intimidating. You're safe now, buddy. You're safe. He said he'd hurt my mom. The boy gasped between sobs. He said if we told anyone, he'd... I know, but you were so brave. That signal you made, that saved both of you. Police cars swept into the lot with practiced efficiency. The man was taken into custody. Without a fight, 8 bikers had a way of making people reconsider their options. The officers took statements from the woman, whose name was Jennifer. Her ex-boyfriend had shown up at her house that morning with a gun, forcing them to drive to some isolated location he'd chosen. She'd been trying to figure out how to escape for hours. My son saw that signal on a video at school, Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face as she held her boy close. Their counselor taught them. I didn't even know he remembered. The boy's name was Tyler. When the police asked him how, he'd thought to signal that specific biker. He looked up at Marcus with those big, trusting eyes and said, he looked like he'd understand. Like he'd been scared before, too. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Some old wound he'd thought had scarred over years ago. This kid had seen past the leather and the tattoos, past the intimidating exterior that made most people give him a wide berth. He'd seen someone who might help. As the police finished their work, and Jennifer prepared to drive to the station to give her full statement, she approached Marcus one more time. I don't know how to thank you. Everyone says not to judge people by appearances, but I'm ashamed to say if I'd seen you on the street yesterday, I might have crossed to the other side. Marcus smiled, the kind of sad smile that carries the weight of 1,000 similar confessions. A lot of people would, ma'am, but that's okay. We know who we are? Tyler broke free from his mother's grip and ran back to Marcus, throwing his arms around the big man's waist. You're a real hero, he said, his voice muffled against Marcus's vest. Marcus picked him up one more time, meeting his eyes at level. Nobody. You're the hero. You asked for help when you needed it. That takes more courage than anything I did today. Don't you ever forget that. As they drove away, Marcus stood with his brothers in the parking lot, watching the blue sedan disappear into the distance. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Hell of a thing, Reaper said, lighting a cigarette. Kid probably saved his own life. Yeah, Marcus agreed. But he needed someone to see the signal, someone who'd care enough to look. They rode on that evening, their motorcycles rumbling through the desert heat, a chain of unlikely guardians heading wherever the road took them. Marcus thought about Tyler, about the courage it took for a 7-year-old to ask for help in the only way he could. He thought about Jennifer, who'd kept herself together long enough to protect her son. And he thought about the signal, that simple gesture that had meant the difference between tragedy and salvation. The world had a funny way of matching people who needed saving with people who knew how to save them. Sometimes the hero wore a badge and a uniform. Sometimes the hero wore leather and carried scars from battles no one talked about. But the real heroes, Marcus knew, were the ones like Tyler, the ones brave, enough to signal for help when the world felt dark and dangerous. And maybe, just maybe, The second kind of hero was the one who paid attention when everyone else looked away. 3 months later, Marcus received a package at the clubhouse. Inside was a crayon drawing of a motorcycle with a stick figure rider, surrounded by hearts. At the bottom, in careful child's handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for seeing me. You're my hero. Love, Tyler." Marcus pinned it to the wall in his room, right next to his patches and his road maps. It stayed there for years, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply pay attention, to see people when they're desperate to be seen, to care when it would be easier to look away. Because in the end, that's what heroism really is, not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it, to be the person who sees the signal and answers the call, no matter what form it takes or who's asking for help.